All right, thanks for joining me today. Today I'm going to be discussing the chicken or the egg, making an analogy for the development of early Christianity. All right, here we go. So, very commonly you'll hear the expression, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And it's a little bit of circular reasoning because, of course, you need a chicken to lay eggs. But then, how do you get a chicken if you don't have eggs in the first place? So, you need the eggs to grow up as a chicken. So, yeah, what came first? Now, in regards to the development of early Christianity, it's a little bit more complex because, in fact, we have four things to consider. We have the Gospel of Mark as the story we know and love. We have Jesus, the man or the character. And we have various miracles, which are hard to believe, but they're part of the story. And then we have, of course, the development of the church. So we have these four things, and we have to ponder what order did they appear, how did they develop, and what came first. Well, we got four things. It could get a little bit confusing, but let's consider each of these variations. The literalist will say something like, well, of course, there's Jesus. He came to earth just as the Gospel of Mark describes. He performed many miracles, and a following developed around him. This following developed into the early church or gathering, assembling of people, and the church grew. And later, at some time, somebody wrote the Gospel of Mark to describe all the things that had happened in the past. So that's the literalist view. A historicist view looks a little bit different. It's quite similar, but of course they will have a historical Jesus, a real person, and he will live and die, be crucified, and he was such a great person that a church developed around him. Of course, the real Jesus didn't do any fancy miracles, but a church and a following developed around him. And at some later date, the church decided we need to write down the story of Jesus. And so they developed the Gospel of Mark and introduce all the miracles, for the most part, into the Gospel, into the story at this point. So that's another scenario where we see all four components come into play. Now, the third option is we have a fictionalist point of view, and the fictionalist view would be something like, well, the Gospel of Mark was written as fiction before there was a concept of Jesus or before any church had developed. Now, of course, the Gospel of Mark would contain Jesus as a fictional character. I probably should write Mark plus Jesus plus miracles. But the idea is that there was no, in contrast to the literalist and historicist view, there was no historical Jesus. So in the fictional scenario, the Jesus is fictional, not historical. So I'm kind of excluding him from the formula here. But the fictionalist will say there was a Gospel of Mark. Of course, it had the story as we know it, with miracles and prophecy and crucifixion, resurrection. And at some point, the story became believed as history, and the church developed from that. So there was no need for the developing church to write the story of their history because they had the story from the beginning before. All right, so these are a few ideas which has a similar analogy to the chicken or the egg. We always have to ponder what came first. And of course, it's a little more complex because we have Mark, Jesus, we have four things to consider and put in the right order. And it's always important to realize with four items you have quite a few varieties of how things could have developed. Now, under the theory that I'm developing here, which I'm calling primitive Markan priority, I'm working with this third view, the fictionalist view, and considering the ramifications of that. So there you go, the chicken or the egg. What came first? Let's see if we can figure it out. Let's see if we can consider all possibilities and see how things fall in place. Thank you for joining me. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment. I'll try to answer any questions that come up, and thank you for watching.